A dense and dark forest where restless spirits and terrifying monsters lurk. An old mansion that's halls are filled with the restless ghosts of former tuberculosis patients. And a blood-soaked battlefield where the dead walk after sundown await on this journey through some of the most haunted places in Michigan. Let's dive right in. Hey guys, and thanks for joining me on this journey through some of the most haunted places in Michigan. Recognized for its sprawling cities, beautiful water expanses, breathtaking nature, unique culture, and more, the Great Lakes state is also jam-packed with chilling ghost stories, old hill folklore, and tales of the paranormal that are sure to send shivers down your spine. Oh, and before we get rolling, if you enjoy my content, guys, I would highly appreciate if you subscribed, hit that like button, shared me with all of your friends, and for those of you who really want to show my channel some love, leaving me a super thanks greatly supports the videos that keep you shivering late into the night. Are you sure you're ready for this one? Our first haunt takes us on a stroll through Michigan's largest city and has us dining at the esteemed Whitney. The Whitney, formerly known as the David Whitney House at 4421 Woodward Avenue in Detroit, Michigan, stands as an extraordinary relic of Gilded Age ambition. Its rose-hued jasper facade, Romanesque arches, Tiffany stained glass panels, and Edison wired interiors presenting a breathtaking spectacle. Yet as dusk falls, the mansion seems to draw in a different breath, one laced with hushed sorrow and unseen presences that linger just beyond sight. The estate was commissioned in 1890 by David Whitney Jr., born in 1830 in Watertown, Massachusetts, who, at age 27, relocated to Detroit and amassed a vast fortune through lumber, steamships, banking, and real estate. He spared no expense in building what became the city's most lavish private residence, investing approximately $400,000 for the 52-room, 22,000-square-foot Revival Mansion, constructed between 1890 and 1894 under architect Gordon W. Lloyd. This architectural marvel featured 218 windows, 20 fireplaces, a secret vault in the dining room, an early personal hydraulic elevator, and mosaic floors beneath soaring stained glass, some worth more than the building itself. While Thomas Edison himself reportedly consulted on the mansion's first in Detroit electrical system. Whitney married Flora McLaughlin in 1860, with whom he had 4 children, and though she died in 1888, never to see the mansion fully completed. His subsequent marriage to her sister Sarah in 1889 meant that Sarah became its true matriarch. After David's sudden death of a heart attack in November of 1900 and Sarah's passing in 1917, the house stayed mostly vacant under a caretaker's watch until 1932, when the Wayne County Medical Society transformed it into medical offices and later a tuberculosis hospice, layering the space with echoes of caregiving and quiet suffering. Notably, the Visiting Nurse Association occupied the carriage house from 1929 and bought the entire property in 1957. By 1979, the mansion was rescued from neglect by preservationist Richard Kuhn, who, by 1986, had restored its woodwork, murals, gardens, and historic integrity, opening it as the Whitney Restaurant. And in 2007, former Chrysler executive Bub Leibler acquired the estate, refurbishing its elegance and adding the third-floor lounge dubbed the Ghost Bar, an unmistakable nod to its growing spectral reputation. At night, however, the mansion's history seems to resurface, not as tragedy, but as persistent glimpses and sounds of the past. Guests and staff report the hydraulic elevator summoning itself between floors before stopping and opening on empty landings. A tall gentleman in period dress, believed to be David Whitney, has been seen watching from a second-floor window or pacing the dining room before disappearing into the floor. And on the third floor, a sobbing woman in white, believed to be Flora, whose death prevented her from ever actually living here, has appeared in the ladies' restroom and lounge, her tears echoing the grief she never voiced during her lifetime. The carriage house, once home to the tea parties of the Whitney's daughter Grace, who later received the Hudson Evans house at 79 Alfred Street as a wedding gift in 1882, maintains her memory in a preserved tea set by the window, and legend holds that moving this set provokes rattling china and heightened activity until it is returned to place, with witnesses reporting soft laughter, giggles of children, and the apparition of a young woman seated by the table. Elsewhere, the mansion echoes with fleeting sounds of utensils stacking themselves in an empty dining room, the distant coughing of long-gone TB patients, cold spots in hallways and under the staircases, footsteps that traverse unpopulated corridors, and recorded EVPs capturing whispers like "quiet on the set," each instance weaving a tapestry of gentle yet undeniable contact with those who once moved within these ornate walls. While no act of violence mars its history, the Whitney's emotional essence, from ambition and wealth to loss, healing, and remembrance, seem etched into every carved banister and polished marble floor, and patrons to the site may enter for fine dining and architectural grandeur, but as evening settles they often exit feeling touched by something unseen, sensing that within this house, the past never truly left, and in some quiet corners, the living and dead may share the same space. Our second haunt takes us to the northern end of the state and has us exploring the Mackinac Island State Park. The expanse of Mackinac Island State Park in Mackinac County, Michigan, unfolds as a panorama of history, natural beauty, and, for those attuned to whispers from the beyond, the delicate boundary between the living and the ghosts of time. Encompassing over 1,800 acres, nearly 80% of the island, it was first established as Mackinac National Park in 1875, and later reorganized as Michigan's inaugural state park in 1895, preserving the wooded glens, limestone formations, military forts, caves, and Victorian-era buildings that together create a tapestry of stories to chill and charm the soul. The island itself has been a crossroads of cultures and conflict long before European settlement, beginning with the indigenous peoples of the Straits of Mackinac. From the mid-17th century, French fur traders would begin establishing trade posts around the area, and the site later housed a mission school for Native Americans and Métis children, where, amid its lofty aims of education and assimilation, at least 16 students succumbed to illness in the basement, a sorrowful legacy remembered in hushed tones. Through the decades, Fort Mackinac, which was reconstructed in 1780 by the British and later seized by Americans in 1796, bore witness to the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812 hostilities before being decommissioned in 1895. During the 20th century, the park's caretakers, whether mission workers, military reenactors, or park curators, navigated a number of restoration projects and public access programs, like the revival of Fort Mackinac's original buildings and the rediscovery of the Indian Dormitory, now the Mackinac Art Museum, which reopened in 2010. Over the years, walking tours, interpretive exhibits, and periodic commemorations such as 1812 battlefield rides and outdoor stargazing at Fort Holmes have transformed this place of contested history into a cherished heritage park. But when daylight wanes, the land's beauty gives way to mystery, as relics of its past seem to stir in silent acknowledgement. Along the Rifle Range Trail, near the southern shore, lies the so-called Drowning Pool, a lagoon believed to hold the spirits of 7 women accused of witchcraft and drowned by stone weights through the 1700s and 1800s. Here, visitors claim to hear water splashing with no wind, and some swear they've seen faint faces suspended just beneath the surface. Additionally, in the nearby Fort Holmes, atop the island's highest elevation, guides and nighttime stargazers have reported 3 British soldiers in red coats, conversing briefly before vanishing into the mist, and sometimes accompanied by disembodied voices speaking Ojibwa. In the stone ramparts and officers' quarters of Fort Mackinac, Victorian-era ghost stories entwine with fact. The sounds of musical lullabies and crying babies drift down empty corridors. Children's toys rearrange between night and dawn. Phantom footsteps echo over flagstones, and fleeting glimpses of spectral limbs are caught in the old hospital. Also, at its post cemetery, mourners describe seeing a solitary woman in mourning garments, pacing amongst the headstones and weeping over a grave she never left. Beyond the military grounds, the mission house's sorrow lingers. Its halls, once echoing with the shouts of missionaries and the cracked voices of children, now reputedly carry spectral giggles, footsteps, and the scuffle of objects being pushed or moved in empty rooms above or below. Meanwhile, the famed Grand Hotel, which is built atop what was once sacred burial grounds, permits no formal paranormal investigations, yet staff and guests have reported an oppressive, uncanny feeling in room 200, and some speak of the feeling of being watched, of sudden throat-tightening sensations, or of encounters with a dark figure in a top hat seated at the piano. Legends also swirl around a child spirit known as Lucy, a curly-haired girl in a sundress said to flit along Anne's tablet steps, that's also been seen peering through the windows at Pine Cottage, or lounging around near Crow's Nest Trail, her existence unverified in records, but persistent in oral tradition. And in the waters between Mission Point and downtown, being the aforementioned Drowning Pool, many tell of an ominous figure in black that wanders the shores. Yet these spectral visitors are not believed to be malevolent. They seem instead to be tethered to memory, each apparition a whisper, each sound a fragment of a vanished life layered into the island's stone and timber. They do not seek to alarm, but to remind of injustice and loss, of cultures disturbed, of lives once lived in earnest upon these roads and fortifications. By day, Mackinac Island State Park offers carriage rides, hiking, stargazing, botanical trails, and historic reenactments. But by night, however, it invites seekers to walk gently through corridors, forest glades, and battlements, not to fear, but to listen. Because here, the boundaries between the ages blur, and the realm of the unseen feels less like intrusion and more like acknowledgement. That amid history's grandeur and evolution, the delicate stirrings of the past never fully depart. And on to number 3, which takes us to the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, and on a hike through the Manaste National Forest. The Manaste National Forest, stretching across Lake, Newaygo, Wexford, and several other Michigan counties, is renowned for its sprawling hardwoods, winding rivers, secluded fire tower vistas, and pockets of pristine wilderness. By day, it beckons hikers, hunters, and nature lovers with its timeless beauty, but when night falls and the forest hushes, its shadowed depths seem to pulse with something older, untamed, and perhaps not human. The history of the forest is deeply rooted in Native American stewardship, principally by the Ojibwa, Odawa, and Potawatomi, who traversed, hunted, and fished these woods long before European settlers ever arrived. With Michigan's lumber boom in the 19th century, the area grew into one of the nation's most heavily harvested regions, with logging camps springing up along the Manaste River. And by the early 20th century, much of the virgin forest had been cleared, and conservation projects began planting trees and protecting watersheds. In the 1930s, the Civilian Conservation Corps constructed fire towers, bridges, campgrounds, and access roads, transforming the scarred landscape into a managed, resilient ecosystem. Through the 1960s, the Huron and Manaste National Forests were administratively combined, creating a nearly million-acre wilderness still overseen by the U.S. Forest Service and praised for its old-growth sections, rare glades, and abundant wildlife. Though the CCC-era structures and historic logging roads feel serene in their remoteness, by night, the forest triggers a cascade of folklore and first-person encounters that suggest something wild and uncanny still inhabits their depths. Among the most pervasive legends is that of the Michigan dogman, a towering bipedal creature with a lupine head, amber eyes, and a human-like torso that was allegedly first sighted in Wexford County in 1887, with repeated sightings near the Manaste watershed in years ending with 7. A fearful presence said to watch silently from the tree line or howl eerily at night. Eyewitness accounts often speak in hushed tones. Hikers and hunters deep in the Manaste report its eyes were blood red and it had massive teeth and claws, and it was at least 10 to 15 feet tall, while others capture nightly knocks and otherworldly howls on recording devices, some claiming the eerie calls rival the infamous Ohio howl. Notably, these sounds can climb the spine of even the most seasoned outdoorsmen, and the mere sensation of being stalked through the underbrush has caused more than one visitor to hastily retreat. Adding to the forest's unsettling reputation is the legend of Dudgeon Swamp, where, in the early 1920s, the infamous Dudgeon family lived under a shroud of secrecy, their history of incest, murder, and insanity said to permeate the swampy margins, coupled with stories of midnight screams heard on the winds, snapping branches without source, and inexplicable chills along the fire tower ridge. Parallel to aforementioned monster lore, cryptozoologists recount recurring encounters with Bigfoot-like figures, with one man reporting camping near Cadillac, where he and his girlfriend heard laborious wood smashing around their tent before a massive silhouette moved alongside them. A thick, shaggy form which vanished once floodlights lit the forest path. Beyond its creatures, however, the forest holds ghostly folklore tied to specific landmarks. Old CCC lookout towers reputedly emanate the smell of pipe smoke, though abandoned for decades, and campers describe phantom vehicles or lost visitors appearing only to vanish when approached, while mysterious glowing lights, sometimes termed witches' lanterns, drift down remote trails or float high above the ridges before blinking out. Though the forest's natural remoteness creates a perfect stage for misstep or overactive imaginations, the consistency, geographic clustering, and visceral detail of these reports make them more than just campfire chatter. They form a collective awareness that this land, though carefully managed, still holds realms of mystery. By day, Manaste National Forest offers idyllic refuge. Canoes on Pine River, spring wildflowers, deer sightings, and fire towers like Hoist or Cadillac offering panoramic peace. But after dark, this refuge morphs. Footsteps in distant sand, eyes glowing from the understory, and the solitary howl of something ancient and watching. For the curious and brave, walking here alone at night is an encounter not just with the forest, but with the forest's enduring spirit, which may still roam, howl, and whisper amongst the pines, long after the last saw has fallen silent. Number 4 has us traveling to the heart of Michigan and has us paying a visit to the state capitol building. The Michigan State Capitol in Lansing, completed in 1878 and officially dedicated amid fanfare as a stunning pinnacle of Victorian-era civic grandeur, stands as the state's third capitol, a 6-year project designed by Elijah E. Myers, with a neoclassical cast-iron dome and meticulously painted murals and portraits that proclaim Michigan's ideal of governance and pride. By day, visitors marvel at its Vermont marble floors, intricate woodwork of white pine, stained glass ceilings in the legislative chamber, and the radiant rotunda carved out beneath the central dome. Its stately presence and historic ambiance speak of democracy in action, echoed in the footsteps of lawmakers, tourists, and schoolchildren alike. The building's construction began in 1872 and was completed by 1878 at a cost exceeding $1.2 million, drawing from public funds raised to express Michigan's growing status amongst the states. Its footprint accommodates more than 130 rooms, including full legislative chambers for the Senate and House, numerous committee rooms, and galleries for public viewing. The rotunda above the grand staircase experienced several decorative additions over the years, including 8 muses painted by Tommaso Juglares in 1886, each arriving from Boston in canvas form before being installed beneath the soaring dome. The building underwent a comprehensive restoration from 1989 to 1992, removing incongruous modern fixtures and restoring original layered paint schemes and intricate stenciling, earning it designation as a National Historic Landmark by that project's completion. Over time, this historic edifice has preserved not only Michigan's legal and political legacy, but a tangible sense of continuity with the state's formative years. However, beneath the veneer of regal civility lie layers of tragedy that complicate the capital's legacy. Accidents and deaths that have, over time, given rise to quiet, persistent tales of spirits who linger. In the 1880s, a teenaged page boy known for his youthful daring tragically fell 2 stories to his death while attempting to jump between the rails of the grand staircase. More misfortune followed decades later when, during repairs to the roof, a roofer lost his footing and perished in an unnoticed slide. Another casualty occurred when an elevator maintenance worker was electrocuted somewhere within the labyrinthine service shafts, and the most recent and perhaps most evocative accident happened during the 1989 to 1992 restoration, when a painter working in the rotunda on a hydraulic lift plummeted to his death, and some who have cited his apparition say he's still wearing his work overalls as he supposedly haunts that very same walkway in the afterlife. As evening descends and the marble corridors empty, witnesses, most often staff and maintenance crews, report strange sensations and apparitions tied to these tragedies. In the rotunda, visitors have glimpsed a solitary figure in painter's attire drifting along the open walkway near the dome's rim, as if still intent on finishing the brushwork that claimed his life. Cold spots materialize out of nowhere near the site of the page boy's fall, sometimes accompanied by the sound of muted laughter or a whispered voice calling "look" or "help." And behind false walls and maintenance closets, some staff members report hearing footsteps when all are supposed to be off of the floor, or the abrupt sensation of a presence at their elbow, only to turn and find empty air. Occasionally, whispers are heard in committee rooms late at night, snatches of debates, the rustle of papers, or mechanical hums when all systems should be shut down. Elevators sometimes stop between floors on their own, and lights flicker in the house gallery, specifically in sections directly above where the roofer is believed to have fallen. Additionally, some employees speak of resolute experiences at the rotunda glass floor, reporting a subtle but distinct pressure around their feet as though the weight of history itself presses down on them, as if something unknowable is shifting beneath the surface. For all of these occurrences, no malign intent is attributed to the Capitol's unseen occupants. Rather, they seem to be tethered to unfinished work, sudden loss, or the echo of transition. The painter may linger to complete his task, the page to relive his youthful bravado, the roofer to guard against a repeat accident, and their presence is felt more often than seen, a soft murmur in the edifice's veins. Regular visitors seeking the Capitol's grandeur rarely linger past dusk, but those who do sometimes confess to an inexplicable chill or a momentary awareness, like a breath upon the nape of their neck, that suggests the living are not entirely alone within these walls. By day, the Michigan State Capitol stands as a functioning seat of governance and a showcase of artistry and heritage. But by night, however, it becomes the domain of subtle echoes and residual presences, an ongoing testament to the fragility of human life within beauty's embrace, ever reminding us that history is shaped not only by laws and legislation, but also by the individuals whose lives were entwined with its creation, and that sometimes ended abruptly in the very structure they helped create. Last but not least, our fifth and final haunt has us wandering the blood-soaked grounds of the Raisin National Battlefield. The Raisin National Battlefield in Monroe, Michigan, stretches across hallowed grounds where the echoes of the War of 1812 still seem to pulse with restless energy. By day, the rolling fields and interpretive markers stand as a solemn reminder of a pivotal and painful chapter in America's early history. Yet as dusk settles over the low stone fences and winds whisper through the winter bare trees, some visitors speak of an atmosphere so charged with sorrow and memory that it feels less like a tribute than an invitation to listen for voices long since silenced. The land now preserved as the battlefield was once part of Frenchtown, a ribbon-style settlement founded in the 1780s by French-Canadian colonists who had migrated south from Detroit, along the banks of the River Raisin. Throughout the early 1800s, Frenchtown became a strategic stronghold due to its location along the western front of the War of 1812. In January of 1813, American forces under General James Winchester, many of them Kentucky volunteers, attempted to reclaim the area from British troops and their Native American allies. After an initial victory, however, the Americans were taken by surprise just days later in a brutal British counterattack. The Battle of Frenchtown, fought over the course of January 18th through 23rd, resulted in one of the bloodiest engagements of the entire war. Roughly 400 American soldiers were killed outright, and more than 500 were taken prisoner. What followed remains amongst the darkest episodes in early American military history. On the morning after the main fighting ended, dozens of wounded American prisoners who had been left behind were slaughtered by native warriors allied with the British, in an event that became known as the River Raisin Massacre. Only a small number of the original force, just over 30 men, managed to escape, and the cry of "Remember the Raisin" would go on to fuel recruitment and morale for the remainder of the war, and would ultimately help galvanize public support for continued resistance. The battlefield was left scorched and barren. Frenchtown's buildings had been burned to the ground, and many of the bodies from both the battle and the massacre went unburied for weeks. Over the next 2 centuries, the land saw many transformations, used for agriculture, railroad lines, even the construction of a paper mill. It wasn't until extensive archaeological surveys and grassroots campaigns in the early 2000s that serious efforts were made to preserve and interpret the site. Officially designated as a National Battlefield Park in 2010, the area now spans over 40 acres and includes a visitor center, memorial monuments, restored field boundaries, and interpretive trails that retrace the movements and bloodshed of that frigid January week. Yet no amount of commemoration can erase the imprint of violence, and many who visit the park describe a palpable shift in the air as evening descends, as though the land itself remembers. On the long walking paths near the river's edge, some have reported hearing faint gunfire, the clatter of musket balls, or the anguished cries of men in pain, sounds that fade quickly into the silence. There are accounts of visitors seeing fully formed apparitions of uniformed soldiers, often with vacant stares or sudden, jarring movements that vanish as quickly as they appeared, and some report shadowy figures moving behind trees, only to find nothing there when they investigate. The battlefield is also associated with a reoccurring apparition of a woman in mourning dress, often seen drifting between rows of headstones or among the trees just off of the main trail. According to local lore, she is believed to be the spirit of a Frenchtown resident who lost her husband and sons in the conflict, returning even now to search for their remains, and her weeping has reportedly been heard echoing faintly at night, though no source can ever be found. In areas near where the massacre is believed to have occurred, people frequently describe cold spots that defy the season, equipment failures, and the sensation of being watched. One frequent story involves a young reenactor who was apparently approached by an officer in an old-style uniform who gave him instructions, only for the man to disappear entirely a moment later, and the reenactor later discovered that no one fitting the description of the man was present or accounted for. Additionally, paranormal groups who have conducted investigations in and around the visitor center have claimed to capture unexplained voices on audio recordings, with broken phrases like "help me," "run," and "mother," among other fragments. As with our other locations, these are not tales of malevolent entities, nor do they suggest that the land is cursed, but rather that it's crowded with memory. The suffering here was immense, the loss deeply personal to families in both Kentucky and Michigan, and the scars it left were not just physical. For the spirits that linger at River Raisin seem not to threaten but to endure, playing out their last moments again and again across the fields they never left. By day, the park educates visitors, honors the dead, and safeguards the artifacts of conflict often forgotten. But by night, it transforms into something far older. An open wound stitched over with history but never fully healed. And those who walk its trails after dark do so in the presence of more than just the past. They walk with it. Thanks for joining me on this journey through some more of the most haunted places in Michigan. If you enjoyed hearing my histories and ghost stories, subscribe to my channel, throw this upload a like, and share me with anyone you feel could use a good scare. I'll catch you all next time, and stay spooky.